Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nominations at KSLSports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week. And it's sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals.
The University of Utah, 0-3 in the Big 12. They've been blown out in all three Big 12 basketball games. What's got to change for success? Cougar fans really enjoyed this question. Michael, I thought Utah fans said the Big 12 would be a cakewalk.
Yeah, but I think that was for football.
That was for football. I don't think I heard a single Utah fan say they're going to dominate in basketball.
I don't think it's a cakewalk for Houston, Kansas, Iowa State, the better teams in this conference. It's not a cakewalk. They'll do well, but it's not going to be easy. You still got to ball out. And Utah, this is not good.
Brady, but I thought they were going to run the conference. Again, football, Brady.
Skiing, gymnastics.
Don says they need to move to the new Pac-12. Well, that's going to have Gonzaga and San Diego State and Utah State.
And some team like called Utah State who's
good, and they don't want to play them for obvious reasons. Obvious reason.
They're not like Travis Kelce. Let's go in the parking lot.
They do not want to go in the parking lot.
They do not want to play Utah State.
Jared Calhoun came on the air and told us, offered 2-for-1s, offered to start on the road there. No.
Really?
You were sitting right there. You heard it.
Yeah, but you're making it seem like they're afraid of them. The way not wanting to play them and not wanting to play them because they're going to beat us are two different things. And I'm getting the impression that you're leaning towards the latter.
I am leaning towards the latter.
Right. And I did not. That is news to me.
Why do you think they don't want to play him?
I don't know. Why did they not want to play whomever? They just don't. They don't see any advantage in it.
They want guaranteed wins. They don't want to play quad one games where they might lose.
Well, some of those quad one losses are better than some of the quad four
wins
wins you have.
I don't know that I buy that.
I don't buy that at all.
He doesn't buy that at all.
He does traffic. I understand.
Coming up momentarily.
That's just what we're going to say every time you talk now, Yak.
It's not my
So what do you guys buy? You don't buy that. I'm a simpleton. There's probably a more complicated.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Okay.
Let me push you back to the conversation you had about BYU basketball the other day. You were talking about the fact that BYU didn't test themselves in the non-conference schedule, and it's affected them going into the Big 12.
I believe that, yes.
Well, I think Utah has the same problem. They feasted on lesser competition, and they're getting absolutely boat raced right now by better competition.
Yeah, I think
that's true, but that doesn't go to why they didn't schedule Utah State.
They would have been smoked no matter what. They're not good.
Okay.
I believe that too. I just don't think they're good enough.
Right. I don't know what they've got. Who's a player that stands out? I don't care who stood out against Radford and Florida A&M and Eastern Washington and Mississippi Valley and Utah Tech and Central Arkansas and Alcorn State. I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. I call those Big Sky type games, and you aren't playing Big Sky level competition. Who stands out in the Big 12 that can be played? They don't have enough players.
There it is. So when you ask what has to change, I assume that's NIL. Because what we hear is NIL drives the transfers and drives the recruits of the elite freshmen and that. And it's an elite conference. Everybody's saying the Big 12 is the number one this year. There's lots of numbers that says the SEC is. And coming up in our very next segment, we can run all of that past Ken Pomeroy from kenpom.com. He'll join us next. Do they have enough NIL? I think that's where it starts. We have people posting, well, here come the Fire Craig Smith posts. Well, when teams don't win enough, coaches, they get fired. But he's won 20-plus games 5 years in a row coming to Utah, It looked like a good hire. You had all NCAA tournament
fine,
quality
but so
teams.
what?
I know. So
That's all
I don't think
history.
it comes down to can you coach. I think you can coach. I don't think
that's
they
not
have
the point.
I think they don't have good enough players. And so what needs to be done? I think they need more NIL money because I don't know how else you get better players. I don't feel like, and we don't really know about the NIL, but I don't look at those players and think they spent a lot of NIL on those guys and they misidentified them. That could be a problem. I don't think that's the problem in this case.
Hey, this is from the Deseret News, Mark Harlan. I feel like our NIL for basketball is very healthy.
Well, then we can go back to Here Come Fire, Craig Smith.
That's a direct quote.
Right. So if that's true, and it doesn't really matter if it's true, if the AD believes it's true, then it's true. So then that's going to point at the coach. Because he thinks in that case, the AD thinks the coach has what he needs to win.
I feel like our NIL for basketball is very healthy, and I'm reading from the Deseret News.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dramatic increase this year. That's why we saw talented student athletes come to the University of Utah along with their desire to play here. So I'm pleased, but we know there's never enough. But you have to be able to say, okay, this is enough to field a very competitive roster. And I think that's exactly what we have in our men's basketball program. So the boss is refuting what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't bode well for Craig. Because then I think the next thing would be to look at the coach. Now, maybe not. Maybe Mark will come out and say something else.
Well, he's in the fourth year of a 6-year deal, and do they want to buy him out?
A good question. I do not know the answer to that.
Well, no, they don't. Will they? You've got to get better players. And the problem here, you lost, like Smith looked like he was onto something. Devion Smith, I'm speaking, and then he leaves.
Right.
And Keita goes to BYU. Wooster, who was injured most of the last season, went to Nebraska. But, your big thing, somehow, if you're 23, that means you're really good. Those are all veteran guys. And
Gone.
But, they won 20 games or so last year, but a lot of that was padded in the NIT.
Right. They were 500 in the league the last 2 years. They had a 10-10 and a 9-11 in their last 2 years in the Pac-12.
Well, at least they were good at home.
Right. That's really it was a very clean break last year, home and away. I think they were 17-2 at the Huntsman Center last season.
But their first home game
did not go well.
No.
I mean, they have a good looking home record right now, but again, that goes back to Florida A&M and Radford.
And I view it, the fans speak, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm around the program right now whatsoever. And in speaking with Chris Hill, that's what he felt like when he made the difficult decision to replace Ron McBride. He understood the popularity of Ron McBride. And speaking with Chris at the time after it was done, in a one-on-one conversation, you could see the anguish in his face. Now, it turned out it was a bonanza. But this was right afterward.
That doesn't mean it's easy in the moment.
We didn't know what Urban was going to do. He hadn't done it yet.
And even
this was before the first game.
But even if he suspected it in the moment,
yeah, it was very difficult for that man to do what he did. And I can remember the conversation. You could hear the pain in his voice. But he said there was not any momentum around the program. And that's what's dangerous. Because once you start getting into the apathetic range, then that's negative. See, like you had with BYU when they were losing those 3 seasons, there wasn't apathy. There was anger. And there are so many ex-players and fans on the street, if I was at wherever I was, because I was a watchdog beat guy at the time. I was doing the radio, so I had a little bit of following, and people knew who I was. And my gosh, I was just, I don't want to say I'm blown away, but impressed in a negative sense about the amount of commitment people had to that program. Just furious about what was happening. So obviously they made that move. Here, I sense more of an apathetic. Now, I'm not there every day like I was 20 years ago. So
but you turn on the TV and you see the empty red seats.
Yeah, and I went to a game
or you
this
stream
year,
and you see the empty
and my
red seats.
wife just looked at me and she says, "Where are they?"
Been gone for a while now.
Yeah. And she remembers the days when I was there in the 90s as the beat guy for the Ute basketball.
And you couldn't get a seat.
Oh, man, it was a place to be on Thursdays and Fridays. Or Saturdays, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely was.
Yeah.
It was packed. It was rocking. It was an awesome home court advantage.
It really was. And I looked forward to it every day. And I get to go cover this team tonight. And
yep. The band is playing. People are waving the flags.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
just a great atmosphere.
So are they angry or are they apathetic? Because if they're apathetic, man, that bothers me more than anger. And right now, my anecdotal survey seems to be that it's apathetic. And that's a bad situation to be in. And as I look at their team and as I look at the schedule, I don't know that I see it getting better. I doubt they're going to go 0-20. But I don't know what games they're going to win. You know, they got Oklahoma State coming in Saturday, and if they get blown out by Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State looks like bottom half of the league, right?
Statistically, yes. Doesn't mean they're bad.
Right.
But
the point is that
one,
they could be one of the bottom half, bottom third, bottom quarter teams in the league, but if there's still too much for you to handle.
If they come in and smoke you, I think we'll see a lot in the next 3 Saturdays. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and the way it works is the next 3. So the 11th, they're home, Oklahoma State, 18th, home, BYU, and then following that up, the 25th, home, Baylor. So that's the rest of the Saturdays in the month, and that's not a work night. And, unless there's some blizzard or something, you can't really say, well, it's inconvenient to go up there, blah, blah, blah. And next week, on the 18th, it'll look super bad if
BYU fans take over the Huntsman Center.
Yeah, and they just dominate. Because they did during the Fredette, when Fredette hit that half-court shot and Rebelbot gave me a heart attack, and I was sitting in front of him, and when he screamed it out. And that was a bad look to have the majority of the fans, and certainly in terms of noise, be BYU. And that was Boylan, and we know what happened to Boylan. I hate to say this, man, but I don't know that I see a way out.
Well, the record, the attendance, combined with the quote from the athletic director, I mean, what other picture does that paint for you?
I'm in the moment, and they're 0-3 with 3 blowouts.
Right.
What can I say?
I don't think the attendance is going to get fixed anytime soon. People plan their schedules. They buy season tickets or they don't. That's how most people go to games, is on the season tickets. You can sell some in the secondary market. You can sell some walk-up, but you're not going to sell thousands and thousands of them. So the question is, does the team look more competitive?
The BYU game's ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
That sucks.
You think a rivalry game could meander its way onto ESPNU or ESPN2?
Yeah.
But they got so many slots for the Big 12, and then you've got to look at the Big 12 that day, and if they got nationally ranked teams playing each other.
Don't they have other contracts like football? They got like 2 and 3. So it's on Fox Sports 1 or whatever. They don't have that in basketball? I mean, I don't really follow that stuff.
I haven't followed it either.
They're going to be adding more of that, but it's not. I don't think it comes into effect till
That's
next
what
year.
TNT will do that
TNT will get
next
some
year.
of those. CBS Sports will have more as well.
Yeah. So, you go through and you look at if it's not on this station, you try that station.
So I'm looking at this Saturday, and they don't have any games on FS1 or anything else. They've got an ESPN, an ESPN2, another ESPN, and then the rest are on ESPN Plus.
And I wonder if that hurts Utah too. Joe Fan is thinking, wait a second, man. I'm already paying through the nose for all my TV stuff.
Yeah.
I want to buy another thing for another $100 or whatever.
No.
And most of their games are ESPN Plus.
Oh, my gosh.
The overwhelming amount of games are ESPN Plus.
So that BYU-Utah game, not only is it on ESPN Plus, number 3 Iowa State and number 21 West Virginia is on ESPN Plus. Oh, here's your point. CBS Sports Network is taking 2 games. They're taking 12th-ranked Houston playing UCF and they're taking Arizona State and Cincinnati.
Oh, this weekend you're talking about?
And the next weekend, the weekend of the BYU-Utah game.
Okay.
CBS Sports Network would rather have ASU and Cincinnati than BYU and Utah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
CBS has a game, and they're taking Kansas and Kansas State. Okay,
that's a
rivalry game with number 11 Kansas, a brand name. Yeah, so that's a no-brainer
for sure.
But that's not a great sign that.
My heart bounced.
He took your soul.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal. I can see it in my eyes. Probably a lot of us can, coming down the right side.
Yep.
And the classic Jimmer.
Yeah, well, there you
go. Nothing.
It was almost like an MJ shrug, like
very little show.
He didn't wave goodbye.
No,
like
he did not. He's so understated.
I mean, it was halftime. You can leave at halftime. It's over.
Basically, that was.
It was over, right?
Yeah.
That was the dagger.
They really put it to him. Was that the season? I think it was down the road. Nice of you to show up. Was that the same season?
It's 2011. It's right around that same time frame.
Nice of you to show up.
DJ and PK, Ken Pomeroy, KenPom.com, talking college basketball. 15-1 Aggies. What does he think of the Cougars? Is the Big 12 the best league, or is it really the SEC? We'll talk with Ken Pomeroy about college hoops next.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
What a run this Utah State Aggies team is on. If you're not paying attention and you're not following along, you need to start, because this Utah State Aggies team is really, really good. They are 4-0 in quad one road games. Nobody else in the country can match that. Not Duke, not Tennessee even. It's Utah State. It's just a different guy every night. So Carson Templin came off the bench, scores 18 against Fresno State. Before that, Ian Martinez scored 17 straight points to save them in Reno. And of course, Tucker Anderson hits the big threes against San Diego State. They're not leaning on just one guy. It's not just all about Mason Falslev, who's been steady throughout. They got to have other guys step up if you're going to be an NCAA tournament team, if you're going to win the Mountain West Championship. And right now, they're in the driver's seat.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Join JJ and Alex along with Advanced Window Products at the Utah Home Show Friday from 3 to 6 at the Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy. DJ, PK, and we're joined now by Ken Pomeroy, owner of KenPom.com and college basketball analytics guru. Ken, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, gentlemen. Always a thrill to start my day on your program.
It is a new year. The conference season is underway. In your mind, major storylines, major surprises, disappointments, successes, whatever they might be, what are you thinking?
I think the major storyline is just the strength at the top of the sport right now. Really between Duke, who people may be aware, I have this kid named Cooper Flagg, who has essentially lived up to the hype of being the best freshman in college basketball and on his way to being a first-team All-American. I mean, behind him and you know, kind of a supporting cast that has proven to mesh quite well. Duke looks extremely strong. So strong that they right now have, according to my model, a 36% chance of going undefeated in the ACC. And part of that is Duke is really strong. Part of that is the ACC is weak. But just by comparison, just for reference, guys, Gonzaga in the WCC, perennial, you know, winners of that league, have right now an 11% chance of going undefeated. And it's not a super strong Gonzaga team this year, but the point is that Duke is doing its Gonzaga impression on the ACC. And then you have Auburn in the SEC, who has been extremely strong as well. Their only loss was at Duke in a really good game earlier in the season. And those two teams have just been outstanding to start the season. I mean, you look at the ratings, and they're two of the strongest teams that I've had in the ratings to this point in the season.
I can recall watching earlier this year in the season, so it would have been late in 2024. Some coach says, "I don't give a bleep what Ken Palm thinks." Do you remember hearing that?
I do remember. That was Kevin Willard of the University of Maryland. I think it was Kevin Willard, yeah.
And I felt bad for you.
I don't feel bad for me, PK. I've dealt with worse.
But I care what other people think of you.
Yeah, I mean, what is funny about that quote? He was commenting, I guess, somebody was questioning his schedule, and he was basically saying, one of the teams they played that was rated poorly maybe wasn't that poor, and that's where the quote came from. But the oddity is, like, I've had Maryland ranked higher in my ratings than they've been in the AP poll, or really been in kind of in conventional wisdom. So Kevin Willard is only hurting himself by making that comment. So you don't have to go there.
Yeah, here's the headline. Sometimes Ken Palm is full of bleep.
Yes. Yep. That's it.
And I thought, oh, great. I am bringing that up when we talk to him.
Yeah, it's a great soundbite for all my friends to play.
What was worse, hearing that sometimes Ken Palm is full of bleep, or DJ not knowing who you are and letting you in the building and made you go around like 2 miles out of the way to get in?
I mean, that's a story that never gets old.
I would tend to disagree, but whatever you want.
Let's take a vote. We got 3 right here.
Oh, it's going to be 3-1.
Aye.
As a pollster goes, I'm pretty good.
I mean, the problem is, I respect DJ. I mean, who doesn't respect DJ? When DJ tells you got to go through security, I mean, you have to go through security. So.
He thought you were packing heat.
That guy's got to go through a metal detector, obviously. Look at the shifty look on his face.
He's full of shifty. We keep hearing quad 1, quad 2, and it's a big deal, and it's been a big deal. Explain how that is divvied up, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what that means.
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, it's just, in its simplest terms, it's a way to express, the difficulty of an opponent. So it's sort of shorthand. Like, when it comes down to it, the committee, when it's looking at, who you've beaten and the quality of the teams, it's still ultimately going to look at the rank of the opponent and where the game was played. And they're not going to get too hung up on whether it was quad 1 or quad 2 or whatever. But to qualify to be a quad 1 win, or a quad 1 game, quad 1 opponent, it would be playing a team at home that's ranked in the top 30. So you're playing in your own building, top 30 team, or you go on the road and it's a top 75 team. So obviously road games are more difficult. So that ranking, there's a larger net there for games that are considered quad 1. So that's how quad 1 works. Quad 2 is another level down, but quad 1 is basically the equivalent of a top 50 game on a neutral court. Quad 2 is the equivalent of a top 100 game on a neutral court. And the more of those wins you get, the better your chances of getting in the tournament are. I mean, in the really simplest terms, I think the committee, this is oversimplifying things, but the committee is basically like going to be impressed by your 5 best wins, and they're going to look at your 5 worst losses. And that's going to go a long way towards determining how you get into the tournament. So obviously, if you're in a conference like the SEC, where almost all of your games are quad 1 and quad 2, like if you win 8 games in conference, like your 5 best wins are going to look really good. And if you're in the Mountain West, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. And if you're in conferences below that, it's going to be extremely challenging, because your 5 best wins invariably are going to include 2 or 3 games that are just not very impressive.
To the point that could be expressed maybe a little more eloquently than the Maryland coach shared with us, Jared Calhoun at Utah State said before the game with UC San Diego, this is the best team we're going to play right here. And they lost at home, which obviously they don't lose to the Spectrum a lot. And then they go on the road and beat 3 state teams that you think are pretty good, San Diego State and Nevada and St. Mary's. Now, you have UC San Diego lower than some of those teams. So how would you explain his evaluation, which on the court proved to be true and he called a shot in advance, versus how you got teams stacked up with the numbers right now, and how those numbers might play out over the course of the season?
Right. So, I think he was correct up to that point. Up to that point in the schedule, you could certainly make a case that UC San Diego was the best team they have played. I mean, I think there's a little bit of, extra mustard on that comment simply to motivate the team and maybe motivate fans and say, hey, this is the team you haven't heard of, but they're actually really good. And by the way, they currently have the longest winning streak in the country. So they're doing the Aggies some favors really by continuing to win. But this does get back to what I was talking about, where it's really, the Aggies completely made up for that loss by, as you said, going on the road, beating St. Mary's and San Diego State, who are probably both going to be tournament teams, beating Nevada, who may not be, but certainly in the running. They've been extremely unlucky in late game situations in conference play so far. But, you're looking at your 5 best wins. Those games are going to be on there. Like, it's, in some ways, it's better. If you were going to lose one of those 4 games, it's almost better to lose the home game to UC San Diego, because those other 3 wins actually end up being more impressive and will get the committee's attention a lot more. They love teams that perform well on the road against quality competition, and the Aggies were able to check that box. So they're still in good shape, and like I said, like the UC San Diego loss, Coach Calhoun was right. They're a really good team, and ultimately it was a stunning loss. Props to UC San Diego for coming up to altitude and getting the win in a very difficult place to play, but ultimately it's not too harmful to their resume, because they have more than made up for it since then.
No, I get what you're saying, that it's better to have those road wins, and so you lose one at home, so what? You got 3 or 4 dings. Right now you may have more that more than make up for that, so they're fine. For the Cougars, a lot of hype around the program, and you live in the community, so you know it as well as anybody, that when Kevin Young came here, it's like, wow, he just took it by storm right off the bat. And so now they're 1-2, very disappointing loss to Tech the other night at home, and we know the Big 12 is difficult. What do you think? Their non-conference record is already on record, and they can't change that. What do you think that they need as far as a record in conference to get in?
So, the Big 12 obviously presents a lot of opportunities for quality wins. That said, the performance on the road of BYU historically in the Big 12 so far has not been great. I mean, their calling card really should be getting wins at home, and that's why, in particular, the Texas Tech game was disappointing. But I'd say right now, to answer your question, probably 11-9 to feel safe. I mean, I got them projected 10-10. That might do it. Like, you're obviously going to get quality wins in those 9 future wins that you're going to have. But it would be close at 10-10. 10-10 probably does it, but you might have to do some work in your conference tournament or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Big 12 is not as strong as it was last year. So last year you go 500 in the league, it's a done deal, provided you had just kind of a decent non-conference performance. But that's not the case this year. And that loss to Providence in particular is pretty damaging in non-conference play, to really be just not competitive against a team that is probably not going to be anywhere close to a tournament bid. Remains to be seen. Still time left, but Providence hasn't looked great so far outside of that game. So yeah, I'd say the goal probably has to be 11-9, and you might sneak in at 10-10.
The Big 12 isn't as good as it's been. That has been much discussed. I assume you think the SEC is the best along with everybody else. How did the top 4, 5, 6 leagues shake out in your mind?
Yeah, the SEC is just in another orbit this year. Their non-conference play, as far as I have data back, which goes to 97, non-conference performance was best in terms of winning percentage by any league, best in terms of margin of victory by any league. So, you can draw a line from that to maybe they're the best conference, that we've ever seen. A lot of that will get, revised when we get to the tournament, and obviously a strong performance in the tournament would have to justify that. But the non-conference play was extremely good, and the question is now, how many bids does the league get? Is it right now? You look at a lot of mocks, and they got 12 bids, 11, 12 bids, something like that. And that may be how it ends up working out. I'm actually really fascinated. There's going to just be some bizarre scenarios out of that league. Like Oklahoma did not lose a game in non-conference play. They won the tournament in the Bahamas, which involved beating Louisville and Arizona in particular. It was pretty impressive. They beat Michigan on a neutral site. In league play now, they're 0-2, and I've been projected to, I think, win 7 games in the SEC, so 7-11. So, that probably gets them into the tournament pretty safely, honestly. And you could, maybe expand from that. Like if they go 6-12, do they get into the tournament? They probably get into the tournament at 6-12. Maybe not 5-13, but there's going to be a lot of interesting reflection going on after Selection Sunday if a team with a 6-12 conference record gets into the NCAA tournament. But that's the deal right now with some of these teams in the SEC who, many of whom put up really nice results in non-conference play, and then some of them are going to have to lose games by definition in conference. So that gives you some perspective on where the SEC is. Big Ten and Big 12 are, vying for a pretty distant second, but also I think pretty easily clear of like the Big East, and then the ACC is just a shell of what it was 20 years ago. I mean, it's the bottom of the league is pretty atrocious, and as was the case last year, the Mountain West is nipping at its heels.
How much work does a team like Arizona have to do? At one point, hard to believe, but they were 4-5. Now, when they went 4-5, they haven't lost since, which I think is like 5 games, and they have started with a couple of nice wins on the road against ranked teams in the Big 12. So it seems like what was bleak has turned into sunshine pretty quick.
Yeah, kind of shades of Alabama last year, who got off to like a 6-5 start and probably wasn't ranked in the AP poll. I don't recall, but was still ranked like top 10 in my ratings, and ultimately their fortunes turned around and they did end up making a Final Four, but not necessarily predicting that kind of meteoric success for Arizona. They're not ranked as high in my ratings as Alabama was last year, but they're still sitting at 13. And as you mentioned, have turned things around. And getting a road win at Cincinnati is nice. Getting a road win at West Virginia, who came off themselves getting a road win at Kansas, is pretty impressive. I have West Virginia ranked as the number 1 home court in the country, and that game was really not close. So I think Arizona's headed in the right direction. Again, they obviously whiffed on every single quality opponent they played in non-conference, and that's not great. But there's just so many opportunities in the league that, if they finish, 4th or 5th in the Big 12, and I think they're capable of doing more. I mean, I do think they're kind of a sneaky contender. They're not as good as the top tier, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, but they're pretty good. They got some talent, and they finished 4th or 5th in that league. They will not be sweating at all. They'll be a pretty decent seed in the tournament.
Well, Ken, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for coming on and talking a little college hoops. And as things ramp up here, we will check back in with you.
And I give a you-know-what no matter what you say.
Sometimes
I care.
Ken Palm's full.
Outstanding. Love it.
Sometimes Ken Palm's full.
Thank you, Ken.
See you guys.
Ken Pomeroy from KenPom.com, a local Utah who is a power broker in the college basketball scene.
Yeah, I happened to hear that. And I got to file that. It's funny how famous he is, the name, but some people don't know the face. Like you didn't know the face.
I did not know the face.
I have been with him in situations with athletic directors, and I've had to introduce him to.
They 100% know the name, and they 0% can match it with the face.
Right.
Right.
Because I've been with him at conference tournaments, and I know some ADs. They know my ugly mug, and he's sitting right with me, and I know they don't know who he is, but once I introduce them, then they're like,
Okay.
I'm not even there.
You're not even there. They turn and talk to the king.
Right. I've seen that happen on multiple occasions. So you're not alone.
All right, Cole Bagley, Utah Hockey Club insider for The Zone, joins us in about 15 minutes right here on The Zone. The John Watson Northern Utah High School Players of the Week are Mae Johnson from Bountiful High and Bryson Landis from Bonneville High. Johnson had a big week as the Red Hawks won twice. She tallied 24 points, 16 rebounds, and 4 blocks in a 75-41 win over Box Elder, and followed that up with 25 points and 13 boards in a win at Viewmont. Landis powered Bonneville to a pair of wins, scoring 17 points and grabbing 12 boards in a 45-43 squeaker, a win at Woods Cross, before following it up with 10 points and 9 boards in a 55-51 win over Clearfield. See why new and used car buyers give John Watson Chevrolet more 5-star reviews than any other Chevy dealer in Utah. John Watson Chevrolet, your 5-star Chevy dealer. Utah Jazz are back home tonight, PK. Are you ready for a W? They beat Miami once. Can they do it again? The Heat come in, losers of 3 of the last 4. They did just win at Golden State to snap the 3-game losing streak. And Jimmy Butler is still in the middle of that 7-game suspension.
You know, I think, though, now it's better, more settled with the suspension than it was at the time, because I don't think he was suspended at that point yet, was he?
That was the first game.
Was he suspended?
He was suspended. It had just happened. But I think
they've adjusted.
To your point now, the hubbub, the major distraction, he's still gone. But it was all fresh. It was all brand new. Now they played multiple games and won one without him.
Right.
So are they mentally in a different place? Yeah, you can make that case. Well, we'll find out tonight.
And then physically they're in a different place, too.
Clearly that's true because the other game was in Florida.
Right, so you combine the two.
Mentally and physically.
That's all you can do.
Now, what do you think psychologically?
I think these guys have gotten past it. These guys, you're all pros. And, I mean, they're not all pros. Every one of them is a pro. They're not all pro. You know what I mean?
They're each pros.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I would suspect that they would be able to offer more resistance than they did the other night, which was virtually nothing.
Jazz injury report, Keontae George out. Heel. John Collins out. Hip. Bryce Sensabaugh questionable due to an illness. He was obviously out for the last game.
Did you just get that?
No. I found it.
You found it?
I had to look for it. I am not sent that information.
Oh. Well, but that's in the morning. Don't they put one out later in the day?
Can certainly be updated during the day, and things do change during the day. It's not at all surprising. He's something Sensabaugh could go out or he could go to probable. I would be surprised if Collins or George's status changed. You can't rule it out, but that would be surprising.
And we know Clarkson is out. Right? He's going to be evaluated in a couple of weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
he underwent an MRI on his left foot Monday, which confirmed the torn plantar fascia. So
that sounds like an ouch to me.
That sounds like it'd be gone for a while.
Yeah, so I would expect a more competitive game, and I hope the Jazz lose.
There it is, on the way to better lottery odds.
Yeah. I mean, I hope they freaking lose and lose some more.
More of those Atlanta games. Entertaining, competitive. Oh, and he hit a half quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. I would take that 47 more times.
Cole Bagley, Utah Hockey Club insider for The Zone, joins us on the heels of that loss to Florida, but it's not the losses to the Stanley Cup champs that are the problem. It's the losses to the teams in last place. San Jose's struggling. We will look ahead to that with Cole next.